Welcome to a special virtual edition of the Skeptics track at Dragoncon, where we put the science in science fiction.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptrack live stream. I'm Angela Matke, and I have with me via video from India Abhijit Chanda. He will be Abhijit, I said it wrong, sorry. Chanda, who will be giving us a discussion on Ayurvedic medicine. Are you there? There he is.
Hey, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. It's one of the perks of having a virtual meeting that we can actually have folks who couldn't ordinarily come because they're just so darn far away. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is not something that I usually can do, actually. I mean, I did manage to go to SciCon, I think, a couple of years back, but since today, I mean, this year I was going to do all this. I was going to come to the US and go to all the Skeptics conferences, but thanks to COVID, I can do it for free. Yes.
So it's a mixed blessing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us what you have to say about Ayurvedic. Give us a peek behind the curtain.
Well, this is going to be a bit of a ride because I'm going to put this in context over the last couple of months, especially during the COVID crisis, because everybody's going nuts about immune boosting or boosting your immune system. So I'm going to be talking about the central tenets of Ayurveda, along with all the little things that go behind it, and a lot of the pseudoscience and almost anti-scientific ideas behind it, and the connections that Ayurveda has to the earliest forms of modern medicine. So, basically, this got something to do with humors, and it's not funny, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so basically that's it. So shall we get into it?
That's right. Let's go for a ride.
All righty, come and join me. It's filled with turmeric. That's
what you say to all the
girls. So basically, the meaning of Ayurveda is life and knowledge or science. Of course, all the Ayurvedic people like to think it's science. I'll prefer to go with the knowledge of life interpretation, which is definitely a lot more, well, relatively reasonable if you're talking about, anytime between 300 and 5,000 years ago. So, shall we go next? So, you'll find a few parallels here as we go into what Ayurveda is all about. This is a big word which even I have trouble pronouncing, but it's called the Pancha Mahabhutas, which essentially are the elements that make up the universe and the human body as well, and all animals as well. So, of course, we are all familiar with the four elements, which is air, earth, water, and fire, and the fifth element is not Mila Jovovich, and it's not love, it's ether, which is originally ether. Now, of course, all the Ayurvedics are saying it's space.
What happened to us? Are you there?
These five elements, you get the three main humors of the body. Now, you might have heard that in the 17th century and prior to that, for almost 200 years, modern medicine basically, I can't call it modern medicine, but the medicine of the time was primarily about bloodletting and balancing the humors, and you have black bile and yellow bile and blood and phlegm, which is kind of gross, but, you're talking about the inside of your body, and everything inside your body is kind of gross, but also fascinating, which is why we're here. But so these doshas, they call the three doshas, which is the three different humors, which are the combinations of the five elements that make up your whole body. Now, let's go to the next slide, and you'll see that this is very familiar to the kind of stuff that we used to have back in the day when homeopathy was created as the really cool new medical protocol that everybody was, amazed by, because you didn't have to bleed yourself out to do it. Next. And of course, you see that the black, even then so I had, so just to rewind a little bit, we won't go back to the last slide, but I just wanted to kind of give you a little insight into the kind of things that I've learned. So these 5 elements that we used to have, that people thought that we had, they are also connected with, with the humours, as you saw in the last slide, and they also have different qualities attached to each one of them. This is not too important, but it's just good to know as we move through the rest of the topic. Now, as you can see in this slide, these are 3 body types: the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Now, each one, apparently I did a test online and I found out that I am Kapha, which basically says I have excellent stamina, which I do not. I've also got large, beautiful eyes, and I'm patient and loving and caring, which I think I am. And of course, it says that if these different humours are out of balance in me, then I kind of tend to get depressed and gain weight really quickly and sleep a lot, which is kind of the case, but I'm not depressed or anything of that sort. Whatever it is, it seems to be I'm in balance and out of balance at the same time, which is already a little bit of a clue as to what's really going on under the hood in Ayurveda. Next. So as you can see, this does remind us of the whole ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph body types, which is also, it has been thoroughly debunked quite a while back. People, you're talking to a fitness guy or a nutrition guy on Instagram is full of hot air when they start talking about your body type. And that's it's a big red flag. Yet another red flag in Ayurveda. Next. So as we've kind of explored, and I've said before, all of this, the Ayurvedic system, which was started maybe 5,000 years ago, is proto-science. It is the way we used to do science 3,000 years ago, and it has continued this far. And it's been handed down by generations by word of mouth, by gurus telling their students about the different methodologies, the different preparations, the ingredients, and the entire structure of the Ayurvedic system. And as you know, this kind of thing is extremely unreliable. Where you talk about maybe the telephone game, right? You know those telephone games that you used to play when you were a kid, and you'd be sitting in a party and you have to whisper something from one person, to the next person, and that person has to whisper what they thought you said to the person after that, and by the end of it, the original message is pretty much garbled beyond recognition. And oddly enough, my wife was telling me this story last night, that there's another, I wouldn't say fairy tale, just a story that people kind of share around, that there's a daughter who watches her mother cooking chicken every night, or every other night. And she always sees the mother chop off the legs and leave them aside and then put the rest of the chicken in the pot. Now, there's a Western form of this story which has got a pot roast, but I'll stick to the Indian side of things. So she chops the legs off and she cooks the whole chicken, and the daughter grows up thinking that that's just the way you do it. She never questioned it. She never asked about it and why those legs are left out. So when she's grown up and she's doing that for her daughter, she's cutting the legs off the chicken, chucking them, putting the rest of the chicken in the pot, and cooking that up. Until one day, her mother comes over to visit and says, "Why are you doing that? Why are you chopping the chicken legs and chucking them? Why are you throwing them in the bin? Why are you doing that?" She's like, "Well, I've always seen you do it. I thought that they were useless or they were a bad part of the chicken, and I never cooked with them in." She's like, "Well, I just had a small pot. So that's why we left the legs out. That's the only reason. They're really good. They're the best part of the chicken. What is wrong with you?" Which is the moral of the story is always check your sources and question authority, which is not something which is easily taught, especially in the kind of philosophy that we have in India. You don't question your elders. You don't question the things your teachers ask you. You just take it, you learn it, and you apply it in the best way that you can. So a lot of things could have been left out and lost in the past, which we just don't know about. And of course, one of those things, well, not one of those things, but one of the things that Ayurveda has refused to pick up because it has become such a dogmatic system. Instead of continuing to test and study the preparations they make, they are still dogmatic. They're still living in the time of Humours, and they still don't acknowledge or at its core know what germs are. So they're still thinking that diseases are caused by the imbalance of Humours, instead of actually applying it to real problems like congenital diseases. Maybe it's a chronic disease like asthma or diabetes or heart trouble. Maybe it's high cholesterol for genetic reasons. Maybe it's cancer. Maybe it's type 1 diabetes. Those are not imbalances of Humours. Those are caused by very real problems that some have cures for, some have treatments for, and some don't. And of course, in the current situation, when you're talking about COVID, the only thing people can talk about is immunity boosting, which is something we'll come back to in a bit. Next. So here are some of the claims and excuses that Ayurveda uses, which almost every other complementary and alternative mode of medicine uses. And they're making excuses on how it works because they know that current science isn't going to explain it for them because their materials haven't been studied. So Ayurveda treats the whole body instead of the systems. Like, can we please get rid of that one? Like, I've heard it so much for so many different things, especially homeopathy, which is another one that they keep spouting on about treating the whole body instead of the systems. Have they even sat down to think that when you have a bacterial infection, you get given an antibiotic because that kills the bacterial infection that's causing your sickness? That is curing the root of the problem. It doesn't have to treat your whole body if there is just one problem with it. When you have high cholesterol, you take cholesterol medication to bring your cholesterol levels down. If you're overweight or if you have problems which are being complicated by your weight, then the doctor will tell you to lose weight, make lifestyle changes, and that is as holistic as you can get before adding medicine, if that's necessary. Can I just have a look at the slide again, please? So, of course, we also know that there is an appeal to nature. They say that there are no side effects, which is kind of hard to believe. And if there are no side effects, there are probably no effects to begin with. They've also gotten onto the bandwagon of detoxification. So this is something which detoxing is everywhere. And somehow Ayurveda has managed to pick it up. I don't think it originated from Ayurveda, though I'm sure there are parallels within it. But the whole detox diet thing, the alkaline and acidic diet thing, they've all been absorbed into Ayurveda because they're just convenient, because they move the narrative along. And I heard about this just today. There's a gentleman called I'll put that in quotes, Dr. B.M. Hegde, who has given TED Talks. He's very prominent on social media, and he's a huge promoter and proponent of Ayurveda. And he was during a TED Talk, he said that Ayurveda works on the principles of quantum physics. That remind you of someone?
Yeah.
His name rhymes with Hopra?
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Neither am I. So so you can stick quantum physics into anything that is woo, and somehow they manage to fit it in. Of course, not a single self-respecting quantum physicist is going to admit that any of that makes any sense at all. Next. Yeah, next slide, please.
Are you frozen? The screen? Are you there?
Oh, yeah, there I am.
Okay.
Internet was a little unstable.
That's okay.
So, so when I was a kid, and this is a when I was your age. Anyway, of course, you can see me here with the latest in American hairstyles in around circa 1991. I know my cousin had come down from New Jersey, and she had done a whole lot of hairspray on me. But yeah, I look cute. I don't know what's happened to me over the years.
Adorable.
But when I was when I was a child, I was almost force-fed. I was told to have my Chyawanprash. If you can go to the next slide, you'll see what I mean. Which is a tonic of sorts. Next slide. So this stuff, Dabur Chyawanprash. Dabur is the brand, is the company, but there are many forms of Chyawanprash which a lot of people make, a lot of different companies make. But this is a massive mix-up, concoction, a tonic of about 50 different ingredients, and including ashwagandha, which we can talk about later. But this thing tastes horrible. It's like Indian Marmite or Vegemite. I think Richard Saunders would connect with that one. It tastes, either it tastes awful or you end up really liking it. It's one of those things. There's nothing, I didn't find anything pleasant about it, but I was made to have it like I was supposed to have my veggies. Fortunately, that tapered off over time, and my mom didn't get so fussy about that later on. But there's also another medicine called Mentat, which actually makes me think of something else. I'll come to that a moment later. Live 52 is something a lot of Indians swear by. If you've got jaundice or any sort of liver dysfunction, you have that to promote liver function, which is another vague thing to say, just like immunity boosting. And oh, by the way, Chyawanprash is immunity boosting. As you can see it on that label, double immunity, clinically tested. That is a bold claim. I did go into the study, and I have to say it was very interesting. There were the entire staff, the whole research team were all Dabur employees. They did a smallish study and they were patients who were accepted, not if they had any chronic diseases, but if they had any non-specific symptoms like headaches, difficulty breathing, maybe a slight cough, excess sweating. These are the kinds of symptoms they look for in the people that they selected for this. And it was, you could say, controlled study, but it wasn't placebo controlled. So the people who were in the active group were given Chyawanprash with a glass of milk twice a day. The people in the placebo group were just given a glass of milk. They didn't give anything of the sort to them. And and this study was specifically looking for, looking for improvements in those symptoms. So the placebo control group didn't get anything like Chyawanprash, so they knew they were not having it. So it's not really a placebo group.
And what if one of your problems was lactose intolerance? You would have had a problem.
Seriously, exactly. That's the thing. I was wondering about that because I'm lactose intolerant, and I was like, what about the lactose intolerant people? Like, somebody think of us. And I honestly think that in India, lactose intolerance is not a thing. Even though statistically speaking, we should be about 30% should be lactose intolerant in this country, nobody acknowledges it. Everybody's so surprised. Oh, you can't drink milk? That must be horrible for you. And but we do have soy milk, fortunately. Now the government is making a ruling that you can't call it milk if it's not from a cow. So yeah, we're doing that too. Anyway,
so do they call it soy juice or?
I don't know what they're going to call it. Soy extract, soya dairy? Oh, I don't know. It doesn't sound right.
Oh, goodness.
But either way, there's that whole talk about, soybeans don't have udders, so therefore I know the US is going through a similar kind of thing from the dairy lobby. I've heard, isn't that right?
I don't know. I've been in a hole with COVID and everything, so I haven't been following that kind of thing. So, so what were the results of the study?
Of course, they did find positive results. There was a significant improvement in the symptoms with the active group and the control group, which was significantly smaller, I feel. It was 170 people in the active group and about 140 people in the control group. And of course, the findings were astonishingly amazing that those who had Chyawanprash had had fewer symptoms, their symptoms had improved over time. With such vague symptoms, obviously they're going to improve over time. Like, I don't. So basically, in a nutshell, not very rigorous there. They also did a study recently, which was specifically focused at COVID. And they got about 600 patients from, relatively randomized. With 600 patients is really not that many people when you're talking about a coronavirus the COVID pandemic. There should be at least 1,000, maybe more. And they were just monitored on how many of them got infected. So, and of course, they had the same problem with the placebo group. They didn't really give a Chyawanprash alternate to the control group. They just didn't give them anything. They were just taking the regular stuff. So, they've just been doing the same old nonsense as anybody else has been trying to do. Just publish any sort of paper. You can put that stamp of clinically tested immune booster on your label and sell billions worth. Moving on. The last little one called Mentat actually reminds me of something else. But I was given this during my high school exams because I used to always make an excuse to my mom saying, I couldn't remember anything. That's why I got such low marks. What you're going to do? My memory is horrible, which it is. It is horrible. But so my mother would get a whole bunch of these and I'd pop these like 3 times a day. And it obviously did absolutely nothing. Still just managed to scrape through my exams. Next, please. Now, I'll tell you what Mentat reminds me of. These guys. Anybody remember these guys? Who's watched Dune, the original movie in the 70s? Yeah, talk about it. So they are called Mentats. They are the human computers, the human calculators of the Dune universe. Anyway, moving on. I just wanted to throw that in there. Next. So with the whole immunity boosting spiel, the craziest part of it all, especially during this time, is that it's all government endorsed. So Ayurveda as a whole has been promoted by the Indian government, especially the Ministry of Ayush. And Ayush stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, which is actually originated in Southern Europe. It's another herbal medicine, traditional medicine regime, very much like Ayurveda. Yush, the S is Siddh, which is another form of traditional herbal medicine, which is from the south of India. H for homeopathy. Don't we all love homeopathy? And also naturopathy, which I don't think they could manage to stick into that abbreviation. The acronym. But yeah, so this is endorses alternative therapies to do all sorts of crazy stuff. So if you can look through these slides, you'll be able to see the kinds of things that they're not only promoting things like garlic and different types of herbal teas and green tea and yoga and pranayam, which is the breathing side of yoga where you breathe in different ways. It's a breathing exercise thing. They're also promoting oil pulling.
Oh, goodness. So, and those are the government that are sponsoring those?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
The government has regularly updated the social media channels, their website. Everything has been constantly promoting alternative medicine in every form, not just Ayurveda, but every possible form that you can have to boost your immunity, to protect yourself from COVID-19.
So do you think that that's really sort of the government's, like, in a way to promote sort of the Indian identity, or why do you think that is?
It is essentially, I honestly, the current government is very attracted to traditional Indian science, so to speak. So therefore, all the alternative medicines, of course, are, the Ministry of Ayush has existed before this administration, but it is so ubiquitous. It is so ingrained in our culture and the Hindu belief system that it is taken for granted that it works flawlessly all the time. They have not got the testing rigor to have really tested it to the point where you start figuring out whether this is a real medicine or not. It's just taken for granted that this works because it's Indian and it's ancient and it's natural. So it's ancient, the appeal to in the
antiquity.
What do you call it? The appeal to ancient.
The appeal to antiquity.
The appeal to antiquity, appeal to nature. Everything is all wrapped up in one thing, and of course, it is also connected with nationalism.
Yes.
And Hinduism, which are now synonymous. So it's all of these things put together.
Yeah, something similar has happened in China, of course, with acupuncture, that the Chinese are so wrapped up in that sort of national identity that 100% of the studies, pretty much, that are coming out of China endorse acupuncture, and it really muddies the literature. So I'm sad to see that happening in India as well. So
yeah, we're the same.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. So
yeah,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we're having to combat that. So
yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. The immune boosting mantra has been promoted here as well. Do they not recognize autoimmune diseases?
They recognize it, but then of course, then it's got to be one of your doshas which are out of balance, which causes autoimmune diseases, right? So there's obviously cognitive dissonance. In fact, there are lots of doctors who do promote Ayurveda and yoga and even homeopathy at times. There are doctors who are both normal mainstream medicine doctors while also promoting homeopathy and alt medicine at the same time. It's really hard to find someone who is just mainstream. Like, I have very good doctors. I have, of course, a lot of searching, to find some therapists who are, rigorous and thorough and evidence-based to the most extent. But I have had doctors recommend turmeric to me as an anti-inflammatory, there is some evidence that it might work if it's mixed with piperine. But I think that correct me if I'm wrong, the evidence at this point of time is still very, very inconclusive. But we have bottles of it, we have strips of it, we have everything, we have capsules, we have tablets of turmeric, and they're being thrown everywhere.
Yeah.
And proper doctors are prescribing those as well. So
I don't think there's actually any support for the use of turmeric, even unless it's mixed with actual medicine. And as Mark Crislip said, if you add cow pie to apple pie, it doesn't make the apple pie better. So you should take just the real medicine. So at least there aren't any good studies as far as I know, but I'll be happy to reconsider if I see if there's evidence to support. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But you said something about cow pies, and that is a little troubling.
Did I remind you of something?
Ayurveda, at least to some extent, and the whole Hindu ideology is something that especially recently has been promoting cow products. And I don't mean beef.
Oh dear.
But there have been a lot of things that have been...
I sense something bad coming.
So basically, according to these fanatical ideas, if you mix cow pie with apple pie, your apple pie is now magically healing you.
No.
Yes, that is what they believe. There was one person, one of these gurus, who is now obviously gotten into politics because that's what they all do now. She said that she cured her cancer by, if I could be wrong about the exact disease, but I think it was cancer, by drinking cow urine every day, fresh, hot from the animal.
Oh.
And also rubbing, like massaging the cow, like petting the cow in a certain direction along with the hair, along with the flow of the hair, to reduce her blood pressure.
Well, I mean, I pet my
And there are,
cat and my blood pressure goes down, but
that's a different thing.
I'm not
This
drinking
one
the
is
urine.
magical.
That's not
Yeah.
sanitary. No.
I think cat
no.
urine is, yeah. So, and
No.
I was going to put this into my presentation, and then I thought, you know what, maybe there are people who have slightly weak stomachs. Let me not go there.
No,
But you
we go
brought it
for it
up.
here. We go for it.
Because I have seen videos of people washing their faces and drinking cow urine straight from the cow,
Oh,
right at the back end, first thing in the morning. And I
wow.
just ate, and I shouldn't be talking about this. Anyway, maybe we should move on to the next slide.
He's asking for the next slide.
Yeah, let's see what's on there. Even I don't remember right
There
now.
we
Everything's
go.
kind of a, everything's a blur. I'm saying. Right. So, as I was saying earlier, like there is no control over the kind of claims people can put onto these Ayurvedic medicines. Not only is it boosting immunity, there is liver support, as I had said earlier. There are these amazing claims that you can grow back a full head of hair using some of this stuff. And you could also have a natural way to lose weight and boost your metabolism. Next. And they don't stop there, because they are saying that they have medicines for cancer and diabetes. Now, of course, when tackled with this, I mean, I'm sure when faced with it, they'll say, oh, this just supports the treatment process to get themselves out of hot water. But you can see it's right there on the boxes, and it's right there in the advertisements. It's everywhere. You can pretty much get away with anything. Which brings me to the next slide.
Oh,
Yeah, the pandemic. So I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there's a yoga guru called Baba Ramdev. And he has grown in popularity and in financial status quite significantly over the last decade or so. He was extremely popular. Even my father and even I used to do his pranayam VCD, like he had a VCD, he was selling VCDs, he was doing yoga camps and stuff like that for people all over the country. And then suddenly he had a bright idea. Let me start an FMCG company. Not only did he start it, it is now on track to become the biggest fast-moving consumer goods company in the country. I will get into more of the kind of stuff they've been getting into a little bit later, but first and foremost, they made a claim that they have a preparation, a medicine that can cure COVID-19 100% in 7 days. They had press releases about this all over the place. I was like, oh boy, this is going to be good. Unfortunately, it got worse, because they actually went onto all the news platforms and kept talking about this, that they've got a clinical test running, that they're going to do, that they have found that it cures 100% people, and they'll be publishing it anytime now. I don't know when they started, but goodness knows, this was just a couple of weeks. So next slide, and I'll fill you in. This is the central premise, and in the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about Patanjali and what happened then. So, yeah, as I was saying, Patanjali is a 40,000 crore company. Now, crores are slightly different Indian numbers, which I might have to calculate quickly. They're not Indian numbers. We just put the comma in slightly different places to make it a crore. So this will be 40,000. Pardon me, 40,000. Then 000000. All right. So that makes it about 400 million rupees.
Oh.
I think it's around the ballpark. So whatever it is, that makes it that they are aiming for this. They are already, they've already passed about 10% of that this year, and over the next 5 years are planning to become the biggest FMCG company in the country. And they are minting money. They're making everything from hair products. I mean, pretty much anything you can imagine. They are into skincare, hair care, fast foods or instant foods like instant noodles, honey, and now they have recently launched their clothing line where they are making jeans, which is the first fully Indian jean label. Jeans, like I'm talking about jeans like the ones you wear.
Like blue jeans.
Are,
are they making health claims about those foods and about their clothing
everything.
Products?
Absolutely. They of course, it's all organic and it's all Ayurvedic in their principles. I don't know how you get Ayurvedic jeans, but it's apparently
maybe they're washed in cow dung
cotton.
or something. But
it could be. You could have a special line with just, freshly dunged jeans. And they're en route to become a massive company. They've blown past a lot of the small companies in India as well, and they're also selling water from the Ganges. They sell those in little vials.
Oh goodness!
And cow urine and cow dung, so it's just rounds off their collection.
So one of the questions that we're getting from the stream is there a way to distance the health claims from religious beliefs? They say without offending or shutting the person out. I think what they mean. Well, at least I hope I understand what they mean. To be like the health claims of the Ayurvedic practitioners, etc., and the believers in the Ayurvedic. Is it so deeply entrenched in Hindu philosophy or in the local religions that you just can't extract the scientific claims?
It is something that I think more people should do. I think there are people who are trying to do it. Like lots of people are researching ashwagandha. They're researching turmeric. Western scientists, even some Indian scientists, we're trying to find clinical validity for some of these components. But at the same time, offending people who love Ayurveda is really bad idea, because not only do they believe that it's a part of their religious identity, it has also been handed down from generations from family, through families. So it is a part of their very real personal identity.
Right.
And it is connected. It's very hard to separate these. It's true. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But it's something that needs to be done if it's to get where we want to go. And I'll get to what I think we need to start doing with Ayurveda to really have it fulfill its potential, because I do believe it has a lot of potential. So, but I'll get to that a little bit later in the talk. Next slide. I love that video. I've watched it a million times. It cracks me up every time. So that guy on the cycle was Baba Ramdev himself, not taking any fancy cars, but riding his cycle into his massive compound of Patanjali and falling. It's hilarious. Sorry, it's what do you call, what do the Germans call it? Schadenfreude?
Yeah. Well, maybe he fell into a nice cushiony pile of cow dung, something to keep him from breaking anything.
I hope so. But unfortunately, so the reason why I put that video in there is because they screwed up big time, and they never published the study. The hospitals and the state in which they said they were conducting the study, and where they took permissions to conduct the study, almost filed a case against them for selling a product that was untested and which was doing false advertising for showing 100% cure rate, which of course nothing has a 100% cure rate. So the Ministry of Ayush, these guys who are promoting every form of pseudoscientific medicine out there, they yanked these people up and said, where's the study? You haven't showed us the study. You haven't given us the right paperwork. The only paperwork they could manage to give, and what was finally given to the public, was the permission and the registration of that clinical trial, so to speak. It wasn't a randomized control trial or anything of that sort. So I decided to do some digging myself, because I was like, they're never going to come out with this study. So I looked at all the ingredients, and I've written about this extensively on my website. When it comes to any of the primary ingredients in this kit, the Corona kit, which they were trying to sell, first of all, of course, each preparation had multiple ingredients in them. I mean, they were stuffed full of them. But then with the key ingredients, I found two of them, one which was ashwagandha, which people love talking about, even in the West. But it has absolutely, the only evidence for it interacting with the coronavirus is a computer model where it says, oh, it could bind to the connecting receptor, the connecting, what do you call them? The connecting branches on the corona, the word is slipping me now. But what connects with the ACE2 receptors, which is on the covering of the virus.
Antigens?
So they're saying that it could block those. The antigens. Well, so it said it could connect with those binding receptors and block it from connecting to ACE2 receptors. So that's just a computer model. Another ingredient, which is called Giloy, which is another massive Ayurvedic product, which people just sell Giloy juice all over the place. It's supposed to do a million other things. It's one of those panacea type things. That also has only a computer model going for it. Then there is an oil called Anutel, which is supposed to go into your nose. And it's also got another laundry list of ingredients. And the only test that has ever been done on that is with 9 rabbits who were given, or mice, I think it was, 9 mice who were given, don't quote me on the numbers here, but who were made to have an allergic reaction, and then this oil was popped into their noses, and the reaction was noted. So, again, nothing concrete. And the final ingredient, I think it was tulsi, which is holy basil, again, has absolutely no connection with anything to do with the immune system or with viruses or blocking receptors for viruses. So all in all, whatever evidence they have is horribly weak. It's not even close to being solid. And these are the studies that they cited in their application to register the study. And so eventually, when they had nothing to show and they were getting cases filed against them, they suddenly withdrew and said, sorry, we never said it was 100% cure. We just said it was an immune booster. And this came out in the paper. They actually said that we never said it was 100% cure rate. Are you kidding me? No, it's just an immunity booster. It's one of those supplement things. You just put it on the shelves. And of course, the Ministry of Ayush and all the concerned authorities say, it's an immunity booster. Oh, then it's fine. Just sell as much of it as you want. And they did. And it's on the shelves. And it's selling like hotcakes, along with Arsenicum album and the million other things that the Ministry of Ayush has been promoting ever since. And that is essentially, in a nutshell, how a lot of alternative medicine promoters are doing their science. They are registering studies. They are maybe doing some really weak, small, badly controlled, non-blinded or animal studies to say that they are somehow evidence-based, but they aren't. Next slide, please. And just to take things a little further, the amount of the word immunity boosting has, the kind of usage it's had over the last few months is ridiculous. I had, and this bottle of Lifebuoy immunity boosting hand sanitizer is something I bought from the store. It's a hand sanitizer that is supposed to boost your immunity. I do not know how that works. Google searches, of course, they've got millions of products which are out there, which people are just buying. And they're buying them to such an extent that they're having serious medical side effects from the things that people are. And even these WhatsApp messages have been promoting as immunity boosters, like vitamin D, for example. People have been coming into hospitals with vitamin D overdoses, vitamin C toxicity. And there's this article I just read today, which says that yesterday, this doctor has tweeted that yesterday I saw a patient for diabetes. He had yellow eyes, but no symptoms of liver disease. Bilirubin was normal. Reason, he had consumed 2 tablespoons of turmeric with water 3 times a day for the last 2 to 3 months.
Oh, goodness.
To prevent COVID-19. He had gone yellow on the inside with the kind of turmeric that he was having. And this is, so now those people aren't coming, of course, people are coming in with COVID-19, but with doctors, there are people coming in with toxicity or overdoses of the things that are supposed to prevent COVID-19. People don't have any idea on what the dosages are, what the side effects are, because none of these things have been studied to that extent. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Are you frozen
There
again?
we go.
There you go.
We're back. So just, we're getting close to the end. No, oops, sorry. So the state of the science, and I've got this from a variety of different sources. One of them is Dr. Sumaya Sheikh, who I had an interview with recently. There's another, one of my peers. He works at the NHS in the UK, Purva Chandra, who's recently written an article for Science-Based Medicine, where they have basically told me about how the state of Ayurvedic science is at this point of time. So as I said before, the studies are usually published in small biased journals, which are names like, Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, Homeopathic and Ayurvedic Medicine, or whatever combination of these words that you can possibly find. The peer review is usually done by their peers, admittedly, but the peers in the Ayurveda community. So they're obviously biased towards that science or lack thereof. So these doctors and researchers go to their colleagues to get their stuff peer reviewed, and then they cite each other's work when they're publishing new studies of their own. The sample sizes are usually very small, not blinded, even if they are blinded, it's very weakly done, very badly done. And usually a lot of these studies are in vitro and even animal and computer models, like I'd mentioned earlier. The placebo controls are almost non-existent. And since modern illnesses are not defined in Ayurveda, modern illnesses, at least illnesses that we have now understood more thoroughly, they're not detailed. Like I said, germ theory didn't exist back then. They can't possibly be properly diagnosed or connected with diseases that are written in the Ayurveda. The doses, of course, are also not standardized because we don't know what the molecule is. And with each plant and each herb you take, the doses can differ. The amount, the quantity of the molecules in them could be different in each dose. So how can you standardize them? And of course, since each one of these preparations has anything between 5 to 50 to 100 ingredients, there's really no way to be able to figure out what is having an effect on the illness, if it's having any effect at all, and what kind of havoc it's causing with the other drugs that it is interacting with, which it probably will. So it's an absolute mess, and they won't dig themselves out of it because it has become a belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Well, before you move on, I'm sorry, I have a question. So I understand there were some poisonings that took place because of some impurities that were actually in the Ayurvedic preparation. Some heavy metal toxicities that took place, and there were some deaths from that. Is there any
Yes,
regulation
absolutely.
on actually having in the thing what it says is in the thing? Is the government doing anything about trying to maintain at least keeping the things that aren't supposed to be in there out?
There is some sort of, there are usually there's some regulatory bodies, like the FSSAI, which is the Indian version of the FDA, which usually regulates these things and makes the policies that everybody has to comply with. So the ingredients do need to be in there. The problem is that in Ayurveda there is a branch of Ayurveda, or at least one methodology, which actually uses calcified or oxidized metals in its preparations. So it's called bhuta, which means ashes. But so they take metals and minerals and heat them or cook them under very high temperatures, and which usually comes out with a calcified or an oxidized version of that metal. And often, I mean, you don't know how extensively this has oxidized, if there are still original molecules of the original metal left. But because it's so unregulated, because you don't know how the materials are being prepared that go into the medicine, these are very valid ingredients in Ayurvedic medication. This is not in there by mistake. It has been put in there, but because the processes are not standardized, they could very well lead to heavy metal poisoning. And many people have come in. Frozen again. Yeah. And so many people have been brought into hospitals with heavy metal poisoning because of these preparations. That's the way it is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh,
Indeed.
there's
It is a very...
nothing to say. I mean, it's just shocking.
Sorry?
I said it's just shocking. So
I'm
so sorry. Please, please. We've only got about 8 or so minutes left. I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Please go on.
So next slide, please. And the reason why a lot of these researchers don't think that Ayurveda can conform to Western standards of testing, like randomized control trials, is because they think that Ayurveda is a completely different science on its own. They don't think that the rules apply to them.
Special pleading.
Exactly. And because they say that, because all these medications have so many ingredients, how can you separate them? You lose the effect if you separate them. I mean, it's completely nonsensical. Of course, you can separate them. You can separate them. Then you can put them together once you have cataloged what each one of those ingredients does by themselves, and then see what they do together. It's not a problem. So therefore, there's this very interesting line which I found in this editorial in one of the journals on evidence-based Ayurveda, where it says evidence-based is nothing but some sort of systematic assessment of evidence that may be a single isolated instance called as a case study or case report, or it may be a series of observations. Then it is the case series, or it can go to a systematic evaluation by single blind or double blind randomized trials. So he's really spread out and loosened out the meaning of evidence-based to such an extent that he just goes on to say, you go out there, find whatever evidence that you can gather, and therefore you become evidence-based, and you should practice evidence-based Ayurveda. Like that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Next slide, please. But it isn't all that bad, as I say in the slide. Next. We have lots of medicines which have been brought from herbal origins. We have aspirin, which has come from the willow tree. We have morphine, which has come from opium. We have penicillin that has come from a mold. And we have chloroquine and the infamous hydroxychloroquine, which have originally been synthesized from the bark of the cinchona tree. Cinchona tree?
Cinchona.
Like that.
That's right.
Yeah, cinchona tree. So these are all, and there is a vast potential. Next slide, please. For Ayurveda to have similar medicines waiting to be discovered. Next. So the only thing that we have left to do is to leave the dogma behind and separate as the person had asked earlier, separate the dogma and the religion and the cultural aspects. Take each one of these preparations, take each one of these ingredients, let science do its thing and find out what has value, what doesn't have value, modernized Ayurveda, and it could all make mainstream medicine a whole lot better. It could do nothing, but we won't know until we try. So that's that. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was really wonderful. I'm so grateful that you could join us. Let's see. We do have a question. Did a ton of people in India buy Coronel for Corona? So, and I think you mentioned that there was a huge group of people that bought it. A lot of people bought it.
Oh, yes. A lot of people have bought it. And the weird thing is that our Central Medical Research Department in the government, the ICMR, they continued hydroxychloroquine tests long after it had been proven not to work for COVID, and providing really no evidence or support for it except saying that this is happening. We are studying only medical personnel who are in the COVID, who are on the front lines, and we're testing them with it. And a lot of the studies have been shut down because it was having very unfortunate side effects on the people they were trying it out on. Like, the nausea, the palpitations, the sweating. It just makes you feel really awful.
Right, the fatal heart rhythms,
but yeah.
Little things like that.
Yeah, little things like that.
Yeah.
So they were trying that out on medical personnel for ages.
You make an excellent point. I mean, we do get a lot of our medicines from herbs and from plants. We have cancer-fighting chemicals, vincristine, vinblastine. Those are from vinca. We have you mentioned the willow bark, the aspirin from willow bark, and such. Digitalis comes from the foxglove. But currently, people are pushing the oleander in any particular. But every single part of the plant is poisonous, and it can not even dose response. It's just amazing to me that people are so resistant to actual science when it comes to their health like this. So anyway, so we have just about another 60 seconds for a shameless plug. Where can people find you and find out more information about the work that you're doing?
Just drop into www.berationable.com. I've written about Patanjali. I've written about a lot of COVID debunking, and a little bit about Ayurveda as well on the website. I've got a podcast called the Rationable Podcast, which you can get wherever you get podcasts. We just started a YouTube channel called Rationable, so do check that out. I've got many more interviews and videos coming on that. So come over. It'll be, and let me know what you want to see on the website and what kind of content you want to see, and I'll be happy to do it.
I think Richard Saunders just interviewed you for the Skeptic Zone. Is that right?
Yeah, he does that every now and then. Actually, he gets updates from India about homeopathy and coronavirus every now and then. He did interview me, and I just interviewed him for my show. So I've got an hour-long interview with Richard Saunders coming up this week.
Oh, that's wonderful news to hear. And thank you again so much for joining us. I'm so happy to have your voice in our lexicon now. We really very much appreciate your joining us, and please come back to Dragoncon when we're having it in meat space, okay?
Absolutely, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us here on the live streaming Skeptic Track. I'm Angela Matke, and we'll see you at the next, I hope, at 4 o'clock. 2:30, The Great Pyramids of Giza, Separating Facts from Fiction by David Miano. We'll see you then.
Streaming content is. We sincerely cannot wait to see you all in person again next year. Remember to stay healthy and safe until then. Wear a mask when interacting with other people out in the real world. Want more Skeptrack? Get more than 10 years of Skeptics Track programming at our video archive. video.skeptrack.org